invite. I'm really excited you're here today. Today is a special day for Journey, and last week was fun because if you missed it, it was our 1 year birthday. We call it a birthday. I'm not calling it an anniversary right now. It's a birthday. It was our 1 year birthday. We're kind of growing up, and we're in this facility for 1 year since we left the whole portable phase. Anybody remember that? Anybody the setting up, tearing down every Sunday, right? Some of the guys are cringing right now. Like if you say trailer around some of our guys, they have a fit. We are excited that we've moved out of that portable phase. Now we're more permanent, right? And we believe we belong here in this community. So this has been a lot of fun to celebrate that piece. With that, though, we've been asking for the last 4 weeks, what does God have next for us? That's been the question. It's on the logo behind me. It's the whole reason why we started this series. And yes, it's going to culminate today with a financial piece. That's part of it. But the whole thing is really to ask God, okay, look, we're here. We've become a part of this community. Now, how do we bless this community even more? How do we live into being who we're supposed to be? We realized that God didn't make the church. We are the church. People are the church, not the building. He didn't make us to just inhabit a space. The building is not the end of the church. The building is the beginning, especially in our culture. The building is a tool, but it's the beginning of ministry. It's the beginning of this journey to do ministry, to share the grace of the gospel of Jesus Christ in our neighborhoods, in our community, and to do it in such a way that people realize Christians aren't weird, right? But we have discovered something that we believe is vitally important. So today is the next step in that whole thing. I'm excited for you to be here. Everybody should have, and you can go ahead and take those out, everybody should have an envelope if you've been with us with your commitment card inside. If you do not, okay, at the end of your row, there should be at least one on every row. Perhaps you haven't even filled yours out yet. That's okay. I get it. My wife and I were having some last-minute conversations this morning, tweaking ours a little bit, our commitment. But we want you to have that so you can get it out. You can fill it out right now, but just keep it with you, okay? Now, first things first, if you're a guest this morning, thank you for being here, and relax and stop panicking. Like, I thought this morning, it's how odd it is to be a guest on a Sunday like today. You come in and the first thing the preacher's going to do is stand up and start talking about money, tell you to take out an envelope and fill in those blanks and make sure that there's a lot of zeros in it. Relax. Hopefully, if you're a guest today, you're going to learn a little bit more about who we are, how we function, especially how we talk about money. We think money's an important thing. But we talk about it a little differently, I think, than a lot of people do. If you're a regular, this day is for us, right? This is what we've been building up to, that going from portable to permanent, and now from belonging in the community to blessing the community. That is our conversation. So I remind you all the time, okay, so say it with me in a second. God's people have God's what? Money to do God's work. There it is. Some of you you're a little shy this morning. God's people have God's money to do God's work. And I really believe that. So what that does for everybody in the room, it takes all the pressure off, takes all the burden off. There's no guilt, no shame, no comparison. No comparison. We don't ever compare ourselves to what anybody else can give, right? That's not what this is about, okay? So it's about our faith, not just about your funds. And we are going to talk today about we're bringing a sacrificial gift, a gift that's above and beyond our normal giving. But we've been talking about it. We've been leading up to it, right? When I first started down this path of this church, just planting Journey in this community, my wife and I, we had a couple of things in mind. We really wanted a place where whatever had hurt you in the past, right, was okay to bring along with you. Whatever habit you might have in the moment that was tripping you up was okay to bring along with you to church. Whatever hang up that was keeping you from moving forward was okay to bring along with you. That's the kind of church we've always envisioned Journey to be. This is about a place where the grace of God reigns supreme, and we want people to be able to discover the grace of God and grow. But that involves, listen, I'm going to say something that I think is missed in a lot of churches today. That involves some practice, right? That thing that we don't always like to talk about. It involves a little bit of hard work. For some reason, it seems like a version of Christianity in our culture is just kind of like a finish line thing. Like I became a Christian, and so I'm kind of done. Like I've made it in life, right? It would be the same thing. My son is getting ready to graduate from college with his degree, and we are excited about that. And that's his mother going, please get a job, right? And But look, every one of us know as parents that there are these milestones in the lives of our kids, right? If you don't have kids, you understand this because they were in your life too. And each milestone is not the end, right? It doesn't matter where your kid is in life. Every milestone, even us, right? If you're now adulting, right, you have milestones. And each milestone is simply that. It's a marker. But with one milestone comes a next one out in front of us. Christianity is that way. It is not some mysterious thing that we say yes to Jesus and then we sit down and we're done. That would be taking it easy. That would be being lazy, and that's not what he's called us to. It involves some practice. It involves some hard work. It involves some blood, sweat, and tears, right? And especially in the church, because the relationships, they get a little messy at times, right? And sometimes we lose a little sleep over that. But Christianity is more than just becoming a believer in Jesus Christ and sitting down in a chair. I love this Malcolm Gladwell. If you've never heard him, he's a great author. He's not a Christian writer, but the guy is brilliant, spooky smart, and he reads a lot of research and data, and then he summarizes things really well. And he made this statement in his book, Outliers. He said, practice isn't the thing you do once you're good. It's the thing that you do that makes you good. Can I challenge you that in Christianity, it's the same way? Practice, the things you do are not what earn you God's love. Practice is not what gets you into heaven. Practice is not about earning your salvation. The work you do in life is not about earning more favor from God. It's about working out our salvation in this life. Salvation's free. But once we cross that line, there's things, there's jobs. God has things for us to do. There's milestones to achieve. There's a witness and a testimony and a story that carries on in our life. I love that quote by Malcolm Gladwell. I say this all the time. All truth is God's truth. And if you see somebody who's not a believer and they say something, you resonate with it, you go, man, that's like biblical. It's because all truth belongs to God. And I think he's hit on something. That there's a level of practice that needs to be in our lives, especially as Christians, as we work towards becoming the kind of people God wants us to be. And we do it in community, we do it together, we lock arms, and we show the world what can be different. I want to take you, before we do our commitment, I want to take you to one more quick story. It's a lady who practices her faith in kind of a unique, very unique way, I guess. And she did it almost 2,000 years ago. And here's the thing, we're still talking about it today. So grab your worship flyer because the verses are going to be in there, or grab your phone, or man, if you have a hard copy of the Bible, like still laying around, I know that's ancient or something, but please bring that, right? I love when you bring your Bibles and you write in them. I think that's the best way to study the scriptures. Mark 14, but I still understand if you want to use your iPhone. This letter of Mark is one of the accounts of Jesus' life. He's one of the four of the Gospels, we call them, and these accounts of the life of Jesus were written so that we could understand what Jesus taught. We could understand things about his life. Mark's, we believe, might have been the first one that was written, and it is very short, and because of that, it's very, very concise. So you're going to notice in this story in just a second, Mark starts telling a story, and he like blows through the story. Like he just gets to the point, okay? So we're going to try to slow it down just a little bit, starting in verse 1 of Mark 14. He says, it was now 2 days before the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay, so you need to know just a little bit of context here. Passover was this commemoration, this time where they would have food and time together, and they would think about and pray about and remember them as a nation. When I say them, the nation of Israel, when they were enslaved in Egypt. And Passover was the time when God, using Moses, led them out of slavery. So every year after that, they would have this ceremony, this Passover time. Along with that, they would have all of these meals together, and they would call that the Feasts of Unleavened Bread. Because right before, if you don't know the story, when they were being led out of Egypt, they had to move very quickly in the middle of the night. And part of that movement required that they didn't get to prepare their food the way they might normally have done it. So their bread, they didn't put any leaven in the bread. If you ladies still cook, still bake, I say still because not many people bake bread these days, right? It's too easy to go to the store and buy it. But if you bake bread or any kind of rolls, you know that you have to put yeast in the dough and let it rise. It takes time. And it takes the right temperature, and it's a little frustrating if you've never done it. Sometimes they go flat, they're not any good. Well, in their case, they didn't use any leaven at all. They didn't use any yeast. And so the bread didn't rise. So what they got was they invented the first tortilla. You thought it was in Mexico. It was actually invented in Egypt. And they had their first little hard loaf of bread. And so every year after that, they would make this unleavened bread. It just, it's kind of one of those mistakes. Maybe somebody dries out the turkey every year at Thanksgiving, but now it's a habit. And now it's just, you can't have a turkey without a Thanksgiving without dry turkey. This is what they got stuck in. They were celebrating this, okay? This was their way of working and remembering their history and what God had done for them. Big celebration, everybody involved. Go back to Mark 14, verse 1. So it was now 2 days before Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to arrest him as Jesus, by stealth and kill him. I love that, by stealth. Like we don't want anybody to know about this, but we've got a plot going on here. Verse 2, for they said, watch this is why they want to do it stealthy, not during the feast, lest there be an uproar from the people. Something is starting to happen. This little story starts to tell you what's going on in the history of Israel, in the life of Jesus, and the people, and what this movement is starting to do, right? For years, the nation of Israel had these roles, scribes and Pharisees, these religious leaders, the people in the community that would issue judgment and help them keep order, that would teach them about the things of God, the ways of God, how to follow God. They were special roles. But the problem is, every one of these people in these roles, and it was men, these men started to like the role. They liked the role more than they liked leading people to God. They started to enjoy the power. They enjoyed the entitlement. Look, they just flat enjoyed being at that place in the community, and it was starting to show up. You probably don't remember this. If you've seen these, I don't know if you've ever seen it at a church. I have. There was a church in Galveston one year I was down there, and I pull in, and I'm there to work a youth conference. And right up front, I'm going just because nobody else was in the parking lot. I'm thinking I'm going to go park up near the front door. And I start to park, and all of a sudden I can't park there. There's a sign in the best parking spot on the whole campus, and it's a big campus, and it's reserved for the senior pastor, right? That's kind of what was going on here. There were reservation signs for these guys everywhere. Their whole community listened, paid attention to, did everything they said. It was a level of power that existed within the Jewish community, the Jewish culture. We've grown up, I hope, since the days of just putting reserve signs out for people and letting everybody enjoy that entitlement thing. What do we do today? Now we've learned we don't want to just have this power that we take for ourselves. We want to help other people out. So we put handicap spots out now, where we put moms-to-be spots in the grocery store parking lots, which I love that. I think that's great. But this is not what's going on here. They had the power. They wanted the power. They were keeping the power. They were central to everything going on in this community, right? They enjoyed being important. They enjoyed being listened to. They enjoyed telling everybody else what to do. They enjoyed having that authority. And they enjoyed receiving extravagant gifts because of it. They loved being on the receiving end of the potluck Sundays, right? The best lasagnas came to these guys. They loved that kind of stuff. They focused on entitlement. Instead of what was essential to the people in the community around them. So this account, as we get into it, you're going to see it's going to change really quickly here. In fact, these guys start to kind of get really upset. They're losing their minds because they can sense the shift of power, the change that's coming with Jesus. The people are listening to this guy, and he's teaching, and you know what they're hearing? They're not hearing entitlement anymore. They're hearing a guy who talks about serving others, who talks about loving others. In fact, you're about to watch him go to a place where they wouldn't go. He ran around and sat with and ate dinner with the people that these other entitled religious leaders wouldn't even talk to. He brought words of life, and they brought words of heaviness. And you're going to see that start to play its way out, and the people are starting to break ranks. Walk with me, verse 3. So while he, again, Jesus, was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, he was reclining at a table. Now, first of all, we have to stop right there. Leper is not his last name. If it is, it's a really bummer of a last name. Simon the leper, there were probably hundreds of Simons. Really common name. What we get, though, is a little descriptor about Simon. this kind of makes me nervous because I always envision that mine's going to be like Cecil the Geek if they do that, or the Dork or something. But what you got is you got this descriptor, Simon the leper. Now, let me tell you a little bit about leprosy in their culture. If you had leprosy, you were not allowed to stay in your home. You were not allowed to stay at the center of the community, and you certainly would not have been around a table having dinner with people who didn't have it. People who had leprosy were sent out past the city gates. They were doomed to live a life of begging. They were doomed to be on their own, to not get a lot of support. And so you have to know that's part of their culture. So when I see this, and it says that when he went to the house of Simon the leper, here's what I automatically can deduce: that Simon probably no longer has leprosy. He's in the community. If he doesn't have it, somehow he got better. And by the way, leprosy didn't have a cure back then. Leprosy doesn't have a cure. So if he got better, we can naturally assume that Jesus played a role in his getting better. And he is now going to throw a dinner, and all these people are going to show up. And now you start to understand the religious leaders getting nervous. Like something's going on that they can't control anymore. Right? We told you lepers are supposed to be out near the city, but I no longer have leprosy. How do you answer that? Right? It was all about them losing this entitlement. Verse 3 again. And while he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, he was reclining at a table. And a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard. I just like saying that word. It sounds like something our junior high, our elementary school kids are playing with right now. Pure nard, very costly. And she broke the flask and poured it over his head. Now, I did not have a flask of nard, and Hobby Lobby did not either. But this, so let's just, for me, this is my bottle of pure nard. You got a little bitty bottle of pure nard when you came in. And yes, my wife was making fun of me when I was filling those up this week. But I want you to have something tangible to talk about. This lady who wasn't at the party originally, who shows up, who intrudes on the party, wasn't a guest, comes in with a bottle of pure nard, an alabaster flask. We don't know. I know that those are different. Okay, they're kind of a soapstone, from what I understand, type of jar or bottle. I could not find one, so I'm using glass today. I'm not going to break it, though, thankfully. She walked in, and what happened was everybody recognized that's expensive. Like something's going on. Like they knew that what she had was very, very expensive. And I don't know if it was her retirement. I don't know if it was her investment. I don't know if it's how she got her wealth. Over time, she collected nard somehow. But apparently she had a substantial bottle of it, and it was very, very expensive. And these people are probably watching her thinking, oh, that's what she's going to live on. Like this is her future, this bottle. Why? She's probably bringing it, listen, to pour a little on Jesus, to just make him smell better. Again, you can imagine it's a desert climate, and there was no deodorant, and the men had beards, and the roads were dusty, and they were sweaty. And so this was a common thing, right? That you would take a little bottle and put a little oil on your hands and rub it on somebody's hair or beards. And it was like freshening the tent. I mean, it just made everybody smell better. She didn't do that. She took this bottle, and the tables they reclined at were very low to the ground. So I don't know if she got on her knees, but I imagine that's probably what she did. And as she did, she took that bottle. And by the way, if it's a flask full of nard, that means it's got a lid on it somewhere. It has to. There has to be a way that they put the nard inside the glass jar. But she doesn't take the lid off. It makes sense to me that you take the lid off, you pour some out. In fact, if you want to pour it all out, you take the lid off and you pour it all out. But she didn't do that. She leaned over, and again, this is in my head. It may not be how it played out, but she on the edge of the table, she just whacked the neck of that flask like you might do a champagne bottle if you drink champagne, and she broke it off. And by doing that, she committed to being all in. That flask could not be repaired. She was all in at that point. However expensive it was, there was no going back. Can you imagine? I mean, somebody's getting a little spoon or something, trying to capture some of it. There was just no way. She wasn't going back. She was all in that moment. I was thinking this week, last month, I was changing out some light bulbs in my house. You guys do this too. I know you do this. or unless you have somebody that does that. I don't. I have to do it myself. My wife won't do it for me. And I go and buy, do you buy these new light bulbs that are like, it says on the box, last 22 years? Like my whole family laughs at me because I write on the light bulb the date, because I'm telling you they don't last 22 years. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this information, but I'm coming up with some research. But I put these things in, and they last 22 years. They're not cheap. And I've got one up high, and I'm trying to change one out. And what do? I bobble it. Well, I bobble it, and I'm on a ladder. Don't tell my wife. She doesn't like this. But I bobble it, but I catch it like right here. And then I look around because I'm like, did anybody see that? Because that was really good. I envisioned that day that as she leaned over and she took that bottle and she started to go like this, I bet everybody in that room went and tried to catch it. Like I envisioned that they tried to stop her and pull her back because she just broke something of great value. She was all in that moment. And here's the first principle that I want you to think about as we move forward past our commitments that we're getting ready to bring up here. As we move forward in life and you grow and walk in your faith, here is the principle that we can live our faith, practice our faith through excessive gifts. Excessive gifts. This was an excessive gift. This was very excessive. Now listen, you know what excessive gifts do? They make people very uncomfortable. They make everybody in the room uncomfortable because everybody's sitting there thinking, first of all, I've got a bottle of nard at home. I'm not doing that. That was wasteful. Right? And you're about to see in the responses, that's what they start to do. They make people uncomfortable watching this excessive gift just get poured out. But here's the thing. That gift was nobody else's in the room. That gift was her gift. That excessive gift was her gift. So the context says God is not saying everybody has to give the same excessive gift. He just wants us to give excessively. He wants us to reach down deep and give excessively. And listen to me, because I don't want you to hear, I know when I said that in my own head, I'm hearing like TV preachers and how they say things, and I'm going, that's not what I'm saying. When you give excessively, it's within context of who you are and what your resources are. If you don't have a bottle of pure nard, you can't give a bottle of pure nard, and that's okay. But for each one of us going forward, to practice your faith is to every day get up and just ask God, what kind of excessive gift can I give today? What is it? It might be a conversation. It might be a lunch. It might be you talking to somebody at work that just absolutely drives you crazy, but you know they've got nobody else to talk to, and they're lonely and they need help. Excessive gifts. What is it that you have that you can bring to practice your faith with? Because if you're not willing to be all in, your faith is not going to grow. Let's go back to Mark for just a second. Verse 4. Watch this. Here's the uncomfortable side coming out. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, right? I love that description. Why was the ointment wasted like that? Why did she waste that ointment? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii. I didn't look that up. I can't tell you how much it is. It's a lot of money apparently. And given to the poor. And they scolded her. Now this, what happens next, must have been one of the greatest moments in her life. You ever been scolded? You ever felt like, you know what it's like when you get scolded and you feel like this child that's just being told to go sit in the corner? Verse 6, but Jesus said, leave her alone. How great is that? How do you respond to that? The King of Kings just steps in and says, leave her alone. Why are you troubling her? She has done a beautiful thing to me, for you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them, but you will not always have me. Let me explain this for just a second. It is an aggressive gift that she is bringing. Think about the most aggressive gift you've ever given. Okay, we talked about excessive, but think about aggressive. Right? What's something that you did for somebody that was just over the top aggressive? Chances are you did it for somebody that you really love. You did it for somebody that you really cared for. My wife and I still like to buy her clothes, but there were times in our married lives together when I could, I think especially right after she had one of our kids, I would go to the store and just like buy a lot of clothes that I probably shouldn't have been buying and we didn't probably have the money for, but that's just one of my things. I like her to have that, because I know she doesn't always go buy those kind of things for herself all the time. She's doing better now. It's like a counseling session up here, honey. So but that's my thing, right? That's that aggressive thing. I will spend money on her because of my love for her, right? Think about it. Who have you done that for? Chances are it's somebody that you love so much, you care about so much, that you'll go above and beyond to express your love for them. An aggressive type of gift. But these people are uncomfortable. They're worried about Jesus taking their place. They're starting to worry about this gift, that she could have sold this and given all that money to the poor. And what Jesus says, listen to me, I want you to understand this. What he says here is not because he's belittling the poor. He's not even saying don't ever feed the poor. Do you understand that? He tells us, he tells all of his followers, take care of the poor, take care of the widows, take care of the orphans. So he's not changing his mind. Here's what he's doing. He says she's recognized something, that in this moment, there is not a better option. That she's got this aggressive gift because in this moment's going to pass and it's never going to come back. And in this moment, she responds to that she will never get this moment again to take care of Jesus like that. It's an aggressive expression. So here's the second principle. How do you want to practice your faith? You want to practice it with aggressive expressions. And let me tell you what's going to happen, because the next two verses reveal everything. Verse 8. She has done what she could. She's anointed my body beforehand for burial. Jesus, actually, this is a reference to what's about to happen to him in the next couple of days. They won't understand this reference right here, but they'll come back to it. That's why it's in the book. Verse 9, though, look at what he says. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the world, in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. When you have practiced giving excessive gifts, aggressive expressions, when you practice that, your faith is going to start to speak. Your faith is going to start to tell something. You're not even always going to have to use the words, but when you start to act in this way, when you start to practice your faith, you're going to model it, and the people around you are going to start to pay attention. And this lady, when she modeled this, we now, 2,000 years later, are still talking about that gift. And what has she done? She now has a legacy. Journey, next is not about the money as much as it is about creating a mindset with our faith. It's about looking to the future. It's about building ministries that work with our kids, reach out to local children, develop a youth ministry. It's about building encounters here and in our neighborhoods so our neighbors and our family and our friends can get to know the grace of God. It's about creating moments in our community when people interact with us where they get to see something that they've never seen before. All for the sake of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what we're called to do. And to do that, we're invited to practice our faith in a very excessive and aggressive way. To do the things that maybe nobody else wants to do so that we can reveal the grace of God in a way that touches their lives.